Hey, so this is the Drunkalogs, a podcast about addiction and recovery in which each guest shares their version of how it was, what happened, and how it is now, and then endures a half-hour Q&A at the hands of your host, Nick Morton. I first met my next guest back in the 90s when he was a movie agent at CAA, representing the likes of Oliver Stone and other high-profile filmmakers and writers. I wanted so bad to be a part of this world that he seemed to occupy so comfortably, and that always felt just beyond my grasp. Later, he would go on to sell a screenplay, proving seemingly that he could do anything. He's currently a manager and producer, and I was so thankful to have him on the show to get a little bit of perspective on this short bit of road our journeys briefly shared. Won't you please welcome David Styne.
I grew up in LA at the top of Benedict Canyon in the early to mid 70s. And when I talk about it, I say it's like when Joan Didion talks about like the halcyon days of Los Angeles, like that was it, man. We lived in a bubble. There were kids in every house. There was a ball game in the cul-de-sac every day. Kids rode their big wheels and their Schwinn dirt bikes and went up jumps. And, you know, you just, in the summertime, you went out and played until the sun came down and then you went home. And there, you know, it was like station wagons and Little League baseball. And the whole thing sounded like.
And like Beverly Hills was like the village. You'd go in there to like get an ice cream cone or something.
I lived at the top of Benedict Canyon. So like, you know, later we moved down when I was like 10 or 11 years old to near like Coldwater Park, and I switched to like a Beverly Hills public school system. And so like now in like, you know, 7th or 8th grade, my friends and I were like riding 10-speed bikes around Beverly Hills. It was like a village. That's exactly what it was like.
And what were your parents industry people?
Yes. So my grandfather on my dad's side is a very famous, legendary songwriter and Broadway composer named Julie Styne.
Oh, sure. Wow.
And they're doing they did Funny Girl on Broadway last year with Leah Michele, which was amazing. They're doing a revival of Gypsy with George Wolfe directing and Audra McDonald starring, which opens on Broadway in December. So there's been like this great, you know, resurgence of two of my grandfather's biggest shows. And my dad was an agent at GAC with Mike Medavoy, your former boss.
Wow.
And then my dad growing up was a personal manager. Now, so half of my family was in show business, but I was not one of these kids like J.J. Abrams who was making movies in his backyard with a camera. Like I was around it all my life, but I was a jock. I wanted to be, you know, a baseball player. It was, you know, then when I was a teenager, I was really busy, you know, going to parties and chasing girls and still striking a lot of people out. I was a pitcher, but so yeah, so that's yes. I grew up here and I come from.
And did you go to high school in Beverly Hills?
I did. I went to Beverly Hills High School in the early '80s. And I lived.
Was it a real party scene at Beverly Hills High School in the '80s?
Yeah, I mean, like, so I was like one of these kids who like said, you know, growing up, like, I'll never try pot.
Right.
The total jock. And like there were already kids like in 7th and 8th grade before high school who were like, you know, already doing that, like smoking weed. And they were like, you're such an idiot. Wait till you get to high school. And I was like, no way, man, I'll never try it. And then like I get to Beverly High, you know, and I just look around and I just see all these cool kids and cool clothes and cars and parties. And it just was like, oh man, I want all of this. And, you know, it starts out, you've heard this so many times, I'm sure, with like, you know, pot smoking on the weekends. And then, you know, it becomes like you're smoking weed all the time. And, you know, there was other stuff. But the thing that I say to people all the time is that, you know, like we were really good kids, but we were kind of bad kids, but we were good kids.
Right.
And there was peer pressure and there was tremendous access to everything that, you know, 15 and 16-year-old kids probably shouldn't have access to. But the thing of it is that also there was a profound lack of supervision. and
Right.
we knew how to manipulate, and we knew how to, always be where, so parents were out of town, and, it was a totally different time. But I grew up as many kids did at Beverly. I grew up way too fast. Like by the time I got
Yeah.
to college, I'm like at college and it seems like very slow compared to what I've just.
Where did you end up going to college?
I went to a few colleges. I went to University of Arizona my freshman year. I graduated Beverly High with a pulse. Client Connie Stevens got me into University of Arizona because she had done a lot of charity work with Native Indians in Arizona. So I got into college on a favor. It lasted a year there. Then I went to San Diego State for a year, and I had an English teacher who kept me after class one day and said, "You should transfer to UCLA. You'd be a lot happier." Boy, was he right. I transferred to UCLA my junior year. I declared an English major. And I got serious about school, and I got a great education at UCLA.
Wow, that's wild. And
Yeah.
did you party through college, or did you feel like it was kind of out of your system?
No, I did, and I got sober right as I was graduating UCLA. I got sober for the first time.
Wow. And what prompted that?
Well, I had 3 friends who were in this outpatient program, okay? And I went to a Grateful Dead show at the old Irvine Meadows Amphitheater, which was outdoor. And I was, in the element, as it were, and I didn't even make it out of the parking lot. And I I got, I knocked my front teeth out on the steering wheel, and I just kind of like had this moment of clarity.
Delve too deeply into your pathology, but was that mostly booze like getting you?
No, it was everything I get my hands on.
I spent a lot of time in Grateful Dead parking lots, whether it was like doing whippets or like mushrooms or whatever. But I still found like the most destructive stuff I did to myself was booze, Like I'd be like at a Dead show, but I'd be so drunk, I'd be like vomiting blood. Everyone around me is like, it's kind of in a different place, but.
So that, what you're describing, that's what led to me getting sober for a second time about 6 years ago was booze. Ended up being worse than anything else I ever did but the first time it was like that night at the Dead show, I was so high that I was telling a stranger next to me that I was going to the Holiday Inn in Irvine after the show because I was partying with Bob Weir, and I'd never met Bob Weir before. I like in my head, I was convinced that was happening, and it was like so at any rate, that I got sober, and I was sober. Well, I got sober. I followed my friends in this outpatient program and did great. And like a year in, I got a great job at CAA in the mailroom. And after I'd met with guys like Mike Medavoy and Peter Goober, who knew my parents, and I met with these guys to get career advice. So I get into CAA, and then I'm there for 2 months in the mailroom, working like a dog. I get pulled out of the mailroom and I'm put on Michael Ovitz's desk. It's just like unbelievable. And like, this is like 91 when he's just like I'm on his desk when he brokers Universal to the Japanese. And I've got great stories about all that and stuff that I got to do. And in case you're curious, when I tell my story, in the rooms, I say what happened is like, I got a case of the fuckets. And that's when these slips, they happen, is like, it's not like right away. It's this thing works on you in a different way. So I was in New York with my girlfriend, and I'm stressed out, and I'm like having stomach aches, and inside I'm going like, well, this is so effed up. All I do is work. I work 16 hours a day. I work on the weekends for Opitz. I'm just like, all I do is work, and I just want to go away for 3 days and enjoy myself. And I'm stressed out, and I got a stomach ache. And so that's how it works on you. And so it wasn't very long, after that, I was at a house party, and I just, I had a couple drinks. I had a great night. I was like, Jesus, what have I been missing? And I went out for 25 years. And
when you're in this outpatient program, presumably you're a senior at UCLA at this point, right?
I'm kind of, yeah.
And are you going to 12-step meetings as part of that outpatient program?
Yeah, kind of like as that's ending that intensive outpatient thing where you're doing individual therapy, family therapy, group therapy, you're working the steps, all that stuff. Then they have you start going to meetings. And so I was like going to meetings on like Sunday nights. I thought I was like integrated, but I wasn't quite integrated. And then I went to CAA and work became my higher power. I was working for Ovitz. It was very
I
intoxicating.
mean, you were working for a higher power.
Oh, dude, are you
working
kidding
for
me?
a
It was like working for the president of the United States. I used to tell people I was one of 5 assistants, and it was unbelievable.
I'm just so, because like whatever when I was I started William Morris, and I was such a mess. I mean, I was just a crazy alcoholic at that point.
Who did you work for?
I worked for Rick Hess and Cassian Elways in the independent film division.
Interesting.
It was really fun, and like whatever. I didn't do the mailroom. I went straight onto a desk because I didn't really think I wanted to be an agent. I kind of did what you did, like whatever. I met with some, like Anthony Bregman and various people who were sort of family friends who could kind of like, and they set me up at CAA, and I was like, I don't really want to do this. I still remember the woman who ran the training program there. I think her name was Janine Argerio. I don't know if that rings a bell.
Argerio. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, nah, I don't think this is for me. So I took a job at William Morris, but it was like, I found particularly what we were doing, but I don't really know. That was my only agency experience was that year I spent in the independent film division where, we were always talking out of both sides of our mouths. And I found it really hard to navigate the sort of, I found it, I guess I wonder, like, if I had some tools of recovery, like, would it have felt different to like apply the notion of like keeping my side of the street clean and like not worrying about the outcome and like all these things that are so sort of healthy, but that almost seem like like contrary to the whole business of power brokering at that level. Were those lessons, were you able to use them at all while you were being an assistant, or?
I gotta tell you, man, I was up to my eyeballs in work and pressure, and it was so intense. I like I say, like I didn't like go outside for like 16 hours straight. I was in at 7:30 in the morning. I didn't leave sometimes till 9:30 at night when I was, this is before cell phones. I had a beeper on the weekends, and if I got beeped, I had to get to a phone and call, Ovitz. I was in the office on Saturday. I mean, dude, it was really, really intense.
And you're also really young at that point. You're what, like 22, 23, 24?
I'm 22. I don't know shit.
That's amazing.
So what happened was I was on his desk for like a year and a half, and so he comes into my own little office, and he comes in one morning and he's like, listen, I know you want to be a literary agent. And I'm just like, if you can see I'm in mergers and acquisitions now. So if you want to be in mergers and acquisitions and you still want to like take my shoes to be shined and take my son to the batting cages and take care of my cars, stay here. But if you want to be a literary agent, which is what I think you really want to be, I'm going to put you with somebody who's going to teach you. So he put me on Rob Scheidlinger's desk, and Rob was an amazing motion picture literary agent with an unbelievable client list. And he taught me how to be an agent. And I remember the first day I was on Rob's desk, he goes, put in a booking slip for Gary Sinise of Mice and Men. And I said to him, what's a booking slip? And he's like, serious? I said, yeah. I don't like, so that just kind of shows you, like, I wasn't doing, when I was working for Ovitz, he was like beyond that stuff.
It's funny, when I was working for Rick, we did a lot of like sort of special projects for high profile clients of the agency at the time, like Bruce Willis, and like, so we would deal with Rifkin a lot. And it was similar. Like Rifkin was just like, I'm like, trying to fill out a booking slip. I'm like, should I put your name on this? He's like, why the fuck would I care about that? Like,
Right, exactly. So,
there were other guys like who would call, like, I'm like, you're running the agency and yet you're taking, 15 minutes out of your day to yell at me. Like, this doesn't seem like a constructive use of your time, but
Ovitz tried so many times to make me cry. And like, it was, these guys, it just, that, by the way, that was a totally different time too. All that craziness with the yelling and all that shit, that stopped right around, 99, 2000. I don't know if you noticed that, but that kind of behavior just like went by the wayside. But when I came in like 1990, it was, people were just getting crushed by their
oh
boss.
yeah, weeping in the elevator.
Oh,
just like, it's just the way it was.
Oh, it was.
I met you soon after that, and you were like, in my mind, you were a big deal. You were Oliver Stone's agent. You seemed like, it definitely seemed like CAA had a bit of this like boys club mentality. You seemed like you were very much part of that. Like, one of the bros who I was like, damn, I want that life. Like, I was definitely like, I want to be friends with those guys. Like, how do I do that?
I'm telling you, man, it was a totally different time. It was a totally different business.
Right.
The business now. So I'm hitting my stride right in the mid 90s, and the business is totally flush. There's a reason to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day with people, because there are real jobs to be had. Very tight ecosystem. Everybody knew each other, and people returned phone calls, and there was a real rhythm and rhyme and reason to the business. And it's, as you know, it's not like that at all today.
No, it's crazy.
But we had a great group at CAA, because I said this before, like Mike and Ron and Bill had left the agency, so now I'm kind of like right in the center of this new version of CAA, and we all just worked really hard, but we worked together, and there was like a great sense of camaraderie, and like again, we worked our asses off, but we had a good time doing it.
Yeah.
And so
that way.
The vibe that you guys saw from the outside looking in, that was 100% real. It was an unbelievable time, and we kicked ass, but we had a good time.
Yeah. And so then what happens? Like, when how does it go wrong?
What I say to people, and I might be in the minority, I started to feel the shift, right around 2003, 4.
Right.
I would go to dinner with people that were like presidents of productions at studios, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we would talk, and I known these people, like we started together, so we had a real friendship. And we were like, hey, is it just me? Or like, he's like, no, it's not just you. I like walk down the halls, I'm running, no one's smiling.
Right.
I don't know what to attribute that to. I know the home video market collapsed, and it's just like, it wasn't just like one step deals for writers and all that kind of stuff that started being implemented. Just overall, there just was a different tone to what was going on, and and I think, I don't know if you agree with this, but since like right around 2005, 6, 7, it's been a buyer's side marketplace, and it just seems like it keeps moving further and further into that direction where buyers know exactly what they want, and they know how they want to get it.
Yeah, I think part of it is, obviously the whole digital revolution affecting the way that people consume media, which continues to be like a challenge for everybody. But then also, the M&A world of the media companies, how they've gotten so sort of top heavy, and they're all publicly traded Wall Street conglomerates, and now, of course, adding into that crazy mix, all these, mega tech companies coming in. So, it's even I mean, with few exceptions, it seems like there just aren't that many people who have the power to compete with that. There's just sort of a level of indifference, it feels like, from the buyers that, didn't seem to exist before.
Well, yeah, I think we're both saying kind of the same thing in a different way. So I think my interpretation of kind of what's been happening is like, again, they it's not a buyer side marketplace. You can't sell something unless compel the buyer to buy, and that keeps getting harder and
Right.
harder and more specific and harder and more specific, and there's just less shots, at doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
I, quite frankly, I don't know if do you think about this? Like, I look at like CAA and WME and UTA, and God, these places are like so massive now. Isn't it just like it's like? Do you ever think about the overhead at these places? And like,
Yeah, yes.
we're
I mean, you
not coming.
look at them, continuing to expand
Yeah,
into, new areas.
I,
But
I read an article. Ryan Lord had lunch with a reporter. I can't remember what the publication was, but someone sent it to me and I read it. And he said, quite frankly, it's like sports makes much more money for us, than movies or even television. It's like it's a new world.
yeah, yeah, yeah. When do you end up leaving CAA, and is that part of your story of
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, again, like I'm sure you've heard this many times. It's not just about like our business, but guys like us in any business. There's a work hard and play hard thing that they work off each other, and it can really work for a long time. It's a
yeah,
rewarding thing, but inevitably you start to play harder and more and kind of work hard less, and it gets out of whack, and then there are people who are like paying attention, and they're trying to say to you in a nice way without saying it, like, dude, you got to kind of, and you hear it but you don't hear it. And so
right.
um I my the thing that kind of like was the end of it for me was just something went down, and I just didn't. There was such a better way of me handling whatever it was, and it just and I just handled it very badly, and it became malignant, and I couldn't put it back together as like. And it was tough because I was there for so long, and I was friends with these guys who I was a partner, but these guys owned the place.
Right.
There's a difference, and it was painful because like we had so many years together, and I was friends with these guys out, especially the president. Like, he was at like my mom's house for holidays and stuff, and we had like we play tennis outside the office, and yet we're in this horrible situation, and
And
it just.
how long did that situation go on for?
Oh, you mean like the bitter end?
Yeah.
It was like 2, 3 months tops.
Right.
It just was this drawn out process that, and then it ended. And so I went to ICM for a couple of years, which
Hmm.
was fine, but like, but my big clients, they weren't leaving CAA to come to ICM. And by the way, everyone at ICM was really smart and really great. On it, they're really nice people. But and I used to say like to people on the outside, like it's all the same information that's coming in from the coverage agents. There's just not the same kind of culture that like exists at a kind of place like CAA, because every day when you go into a place like that, you know what you're fighting for. And I was new at ICM, and I just didn't it for whatever it was, I just didn't feel that same thing over there. And they were all great people, but it just didn't take off. And so before my time was up there, I wrote a script myself. I know you mentioned this on Tom's thing, and I put a fake name on it and I sold it. And then I left being an agent, and I now like was a
And did
writer.
you represent the script yourself?
I did.
Amazing.
I
And what was it about?
I'll tell you, it's a cute story. So I came back in like 2006. I came back from a trip to Rio over the winter holidays with a couple of guys I played high school baseball with. We were all single, tore it up. And so I come back from Rio and I'm telling Oliver Stone about my trip. And he says to me, David, that sounds like a movie. We never forgot that. And I actually like wrote on 3x5 index cards a series of anecdotes that like really happened while I was down there. Like
Right.
a crazy. One time when I went away after my infant was born, me and my ex-wife went to Hawaii, two of us, and instead of bringing a book to read, because all I read was scripts, and so when I took trips, I would bring a book.
Yeah.
I brought a legal pad and I wrote out in longhand the movie about my trip to Rio. And so then I got final draft and I was done. And like, I was like, this is probably not the best script in the world, but I know it's like, I know it's a modestly budgeted sex comedy like Hangover was. Okay.
Right.
It was like Hangover set in Rio during the carnival.
Right.
And I bumped into this producer named Scott Steindorf in the hallways at ICM. And while I'm talking to him, this light bulb goes off in my head. He's made a couple movies in Brazil and he has a discretionary fund, which not a lot of producers did. So I said to him, hey, would you want to make a movie like The Hangover set in Rio? And he's like, why? Do you have it? I said, yeah, there's this new writer out of UCLA and I'm working with him. Give me a couple weeks and I'll have it. So now Steindorf is emailing me every day. Where's my Rio comedy? Where's my Rio comedy? So I gave it to him on a Friday with a fake name on it.
Right.
Monday morning, I come into my office at ICM and he and his executive, Dylan Russell, are sitting in my office and they're like, we're not leaving until we have a deal on this script. So then we finished the deal. And then Steindorf says to me like a week later, don't bullshit me. I know you wrote this. And I'm like, how do you know? And he's like, well, one of the three guys is an agent and the guide, the Brazilian guide, you call him Gus, but I know who that is. It's Marco. And I go, how do you know Marco? And he's like, dude, I've been to Rio twice. I know everything. So I say to him, well, you can't tell anyone because I'm still on contract at ICM. And so we said, well, once we get a director, then we'll tell them. And so we got a director and then I told my bosses and they were like, listen, why don't you go, because I made a deal. I made a deal to sell the script and to be a producer, make the movie and see how, if you like it. And then if you don't, come back and maybe you'll come back here or whatever. But so I was off. And so we almost got that movie made.
Who was going to direct it?
Josh Stern. And like he rewrote me and Scott Snyder was like, you're not mad? I was like, no, I want to get my movie made. Get this made. And so then we had John Cusack and Johnny Knoxville for the two brothers. We had Genesis Rodriguez and Jessica Alba as the two Brazilian love interests. We were negotiating with Pacino to play the Brazilian bad guy. And it went to the AFM and it just didn't in the fall of 2011. And it just didn't get over. So that was that. And then like, I don't know, a couple years later, maybe not even, I'd written another script and I gave it to these guys, Bruce Evans and Ray Gideon, who wrote Stand By Me and Starman, old friends, and they're great guys. And they loved my first script. They read this one and they go, listen, when you decide to be a manager, we'll be your first clients. So that was them in a nice way saying like, you did your thing, go back into representation because you're good with that. So I've been the last, 10 years representing a few people and focused on, the producing side of things.
And do you represent those guys?
I did for, I don't know, like 10 years. And and it just, I love them and they're the sweetest guys. And I think they're with a guy named Peter Heller now, but they're very good friends of mine and they always will be.
And so how does your drinking then become part of this story?
Because it's just like, so that, the thing, like I say to like people, like when I got let go from CAA, like the memo was out. I just didn't read it. You know what I mean? Like it was done, but I just didn't want to read the memo. But the memo, it was clear. So I just kept going the way I was going, and I I I had my second moment of clarity in July of 2018.
Right. That's not that long ago.
No, you know, on July 25th, I'll take my 6-year cake.
Right. And I mean, was it like coming into the office and being like so fucking hungover and not being able to make calls, or
Oh
what
no,
was it?
I guess the scary part is like, uh, no, I would get up at 6 a.m., go to the gym, and come to work like, and then like by like, you know, it starts at like 7, then it goes to 6, and then it's at 5 is what I, you know, call it in quote, you know, Miller time, and that for me it
Right.
was, you know, silver tequila, and so it was no, that I guess the scary part is like I didn't really get hangovers.
Were there like consequences when you were sort of like out at parties? Like I remember when I was still drinking a lot, and I didn't really get in that much trouble with my drinking, but like Metaboy would have this Golden Globes party. I don't know if you remember that back in the day, but it would usually be at like John Burkle's house or some absurd house.
Of course, I went to all of them.
Yeah, and like everyone in Hollywood, it would be such a great party. I would get so drunk, and I mean, like my colleagues and I, like the whole, like the next, like you know, for like 10 hours the next day would be like, wait, did I do? How bad was I? You know, like how
Yeah,
bad was I at that party?
yeah. I mean, I remember there was like a lot of pressure at those kinds of parties, and you know, Mike Medavoy was a great to me my whole career, a big supporter of mine, and took a real interest in me. I love Mike Medavoy. But I would go to those parties or CAA, we'd have Golden Globe and Oscar parties. And there was a lot of pressure like those nights to, you know, and so
What was the pressure about? Was it to like do business?
yeah, the pressure was to look busy and to be, you know, rubbing elbows and schmoozing people, and you just didn't want your bosses to look at you not like acting like an agent should be. You know what I mean? Like,
You know, I remember being once, this was when I was working for Phil Anschutz at Crusader, and there was like, it was like, I don't know if they still do this, but people would have these like small, very exclusive parties to sort of promote a film around Oscar time.
right?
And I remember Colleen Camp and John Goldwyn had one that I went to at their house when they were still married. And like I was friends with Colleen, and it was like me, Colleen, and like whatever, just like movie stars and agents. I remember like having a conversation with Colleen, Jim Carrey, and some agent, and Jeff Berg. And Berg pulls the agent aside, like right in front of all of us, and basically like has a huddle about who they're going to hit on at that party in the next 20 seconds. And I was like, wow, this is so like, I'm just here to have a good, but like, this is intense.
Yeah, they're like, it's a like your bosses didn't want you to be talking to your colleagues at these parties. They would,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Get, you know, disperse,
Right.
socialize, talk to, you know. I got like really good at you know, leaving right before I would like, you know, cross the line.
Right.
And then I would go home and keep, you know, the party. That's when the
What
real
provoked
party.
then your moment of clarity?
The second time,
Yeah.
I oh man, I just s somebody just like said to me basically like whatever the specific was, it's just like it's not normal. And like,
Right.
dude, you know, have you ever been to AA before? And I was like, yeah, like 25 years ago. And he was like, he goes, dude, that shit doesn't go away. And it just, for whatever reason, that it was like, boom. And so there were so many different versions of that over the years.
Right.
It just, you know how we are. We just, you're going to hear it when you finally hear it. And it just, that was it. And so I made a call to my best friend since I'm 10 years old, who's got like 35 years. He was going back to the beginning. He was one of the three guys that was already in that
Right.
outpatient program. So he stayed
He
sober.
stayed.
So when I called him and said I'm done, he goes, I've been waiting 25 years for this call. He goes, I got this. So he hooked me up with a guy who is my sponsor now. And like,
And did you start going to meetings at that point, or?
yeah. The difference between this time, so my second sobriety as opposed to my first sobriety, which is when I was 21, 22, is at that time, the first time, I felt different then. It was something that I wanted to keep hidden. Like I was concerned about it. I felt awkward with my peers. This time, I feel the same as I just like I don't feel that way at all. Like it's like no problem. Like it's just like it is what it is, and it like there's nothing to hide.
Um, and I guess, does your life feel different because of it?
Oh yeah, yes. My life feels different.
If you were to try to articulate that, what would it be?
Well, I would say that it's like my biggest like uh, challenge on a daily basis. I guess if challenge is the right word, is like it's not drinking or partying like that's not it. And I know, and I, by the way, like I know the whole thing, like it's doing push-ups, and I understand that, but it's more of like um, learning to understand what happiness feels like and contentment feels like, as opposed to always searching for excitement, because excitement and happiness are two different things. And my whole life, I just was, it started with sports, and then it was girls, and then it was partying, and then it was work, and then it was I was always uh, getting that adrenaline thing and getting excitement, and I was addicted to winning. From like the time I was probably like 10 years old, a baseball coach got a hold of me, and I just became really intense and competitive about everything. And so I, today I'm just accepting, what happiness and contentment feel like, as opposed to wanting to always jack it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm jealous. I mean, I still want to jack it up. I can't stop myself. I mean, it's
How long do you go to meetings?
I don't go to a lot of meetings, if the truth be told. I mean, I've been sober for 13 years,
Okay.
and I am less crazy because of it. I mean, I feel like, for me, the big revelation in sobriety was really that I'm not in control, and I'm not in charge. And that just took a lot of pressure off of me, like the realization that, like, I can do all the great things in the world and be perfect at everything, and it's really not going to make a difference. Like, I think the outcome will be better if I show up on a daily basis and do the things I'm responsible for, and keep my side of the street clean, and do what I say I'm going to do. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to get everything I want, and it doesn't mean that bad things aren't going to happen to me. But like, because I don't get everything I want, and or bad things happen, like, it's not my fault. Like, it's not like I don't feel like it's my job to land this fucking plane in the middle of the hurricane. Like, I'm here, and I'm as good a pilot as you're going to find, but
You're
may still die.
you're a pilot. You're also just a guy that's has a seat on the bus.
Right.
So here's like, if you really this to really just grind it down to like its real essence, for me, this is what it is. And I love to dive deep on a variety of spiritual things, and I love the book and all that. I really do, and I've helped guys. It's amazing. Okay, but here's what it is for me every day. Today, I'm not going to drink, and I'm going to try not to be a dick. That's it.
Right. Yeah.
That's it. Yep.
I don't always do the second.
Duh, none of us do. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's the drink. That's the easy part. It's trying not to be a dick.
Yeah, and I guess like, for me, alcohol was a very effective way of treating all of the all the crazy in my brain. I mean, it really was very good at giving me what I needed to not be a dick.
You're like a baby with a milk
Took it
bottle.
away, then the challenge became, well, how do I continue? How do I be nice and fun and even keeled without it? And that's really been the journey of the 13 years. Because unfortunately, the tool stopped working for me, and then I was just like, I was like horrible. I was either completely grouchy or I was unconscious.
That's alcoholism. You understand that, right?
Yeah.
The booze is what you're using to treat that. And now you're still left with alcoholism.
Still, unfortunately, I'm still like stuck with it, and like it's still, for honestly, like a struggle for me on a daily basis, like not to be a crazy person, and not to like trip out over the end of the coming of the end of the world and whatever, not to still be the the piece of shit at the center of the universe, all those things. And so I do this podcast, like having these like sort of deeper, lengthy conversations with people helps me. I get a lot of wisdom from it. And then I try to go to meetings. My wife is a costume designer, and she's like up in Vancouver right now working on Yellow Jackets. And so I'm like been the single parent for a couple months and 2 teenagers. So I really haven't had time for anything. So I feel like my sobriety is like all out of whack, but
how many kids do you have?
I have 2. I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old.
Great. So you're isn't it amazing? Like you're present as a father, and they trust you. And I mean it's
been. I mean, I'm so thankful that I spent the last 13 years with them sober. I mean, it made me such a better parent than I was when I was drinking.
They don't mix the two, man.
And so many of the lessons that I learned, I apply to my parenting, just in that, like, I don't control these kids. Like, their lives are not my lives. Like, I have responsibilities to them, but like, just because I do all this stuff for them doesn't mean I get anything back, But I do. I get a lot back, but I don't. It's not a tit for tat, How old are your kids?
Well, my daughter that I co-parent is 15, and I have an older daughter that lives in Idaho that's 25. But my younger daughter was 10 when I decided to get sober again, and
right.
Thank God, man, because it scares me to think about if I didn't hear that guy that day to say, like, dude, that shit doesn't go away, because I just don't know what I can't even fathom what the last 5-6 years would have been like. And I'm so grateful that I got sober again, and I get to be a great dad, and I'm present, and it turns out like I'm a really good dad.
Yeah, I mean, it is basically the thing I have done best in my life. I mean, whether for good or ill, it is the defining accomplishment of my life.
But I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, sometimes I'm not okay with it. I was hoping for an Oscar, but I guess I'll just take Dad of the Year.
Listen, pal, I'm like chasing actors, independent films, and waiting for forever on meetings to happen on TV projects. And so it's like, honestly, like I don't know how to do anything else. So this is what I do, and I still love it. But you got a healthy perspective on things, and you're a great dad, and I'm a great dad, and it's all good.
Well, David, thank you for coming on and chatting with me. I really appreciate it. It's been awesome to catch up.
Great chatting with you. It's great to see you. I'm glad you're doing well, and I love what you're doing. This is a great thing that you're doing.
Thanks for listening. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/thedrunkalogs.